Welcome back to the Radian Podcast, your go-to source for digital product-focused discussions on design, technology, and digital health advancements. I'm Maxwell Murray, your host, and I hope today's episode inspires your next big idea. In this episode, you'll hear about
whenever his blood glucose would start to go up and down, there's no way of really knowing unless a notification kicks in. So they had notifications set at like every level, and the house would look like we're in a like a secret military unit with like alarms going off everywhere. And that would happen like multiple times a day. Surely if we could have just glanced every few minutes and just have it there on your phone, we wouldn't need all these alarms. So the idea is by giving people that confidence of knowing their sugar level, they won't need to constantly have alarms going off around them.
Hello, everyone. Joining us is Marwan, the co-founder and iOS developer behind Sweet Dreams, an app designed to help families collaboratively manage diabetes. Inspired by his brother's diagnosis, Marwan and his partner developed a solution that enables remote, real-time monitoring of blood sugar levels, ensuring critical alerts are never missed. Welcome, Marwan.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Maxwell.
So I already mentioned that your brother, your family is a part of the inspiration here. Can you tell us a little bit about Sweet Dreams' origin story? Like what personally pulled you into building for the diabetes community?
Yeah, for sure. So as you say, it's my brother. He was diagnosed with, so I have like 3 brothers, and our youngest sibling, he was diagnosed with diabetes a few years ago with type 1. And we were kind of like downloading all these different apps to monitor and track him. And it just felt to me like we needed to see it on the lock screen. So it's like easier for us to follow him. And I could tell that was a pain point to me and to my family and to him as well. A lot of the features in Sweet Dreams kind of are inspired by that, like how my family was managing diabetes and what that led to. But I remember I was on a plane and I just heard about like live activities, like shortly before that, like that Apple released them. And I was like, isn't it crazy that like no diabetes app that I'm aware of is doing that? So I started like looking into it and sending screenshots to like one of my other brothers. And I'm like, this would be cool, right? Like if I had this, that would be cool. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So the idea initially was just to build something for us to use as a family. And after like prototyping it a bit and using it with like my brothers and my parents, were like, you know what, that's like pretty cool. So I was speaking to my wife about it as well. And we're like, yeah, you know what, like we can turn this into an app to help other people as well. So that was like kind of the origin story. And that was like 2 years ago, I think. And yeah, we've just been working on it since.
Incredible. So it was like a aha moment. You see Apple releases capability that intersects with what would be helpful to your family. And what I don't want people to miss out on is there's a bigger origin here. You personally work in this space already. So it's like a fortunate moment where you have this background that has enabled you to solve a problem for your family. Could you just give us like a quick like history of Marwan?
Yeah, for sure. So I've like always been into tech and like following what especially Apple is doing. Like a bit of an Apple fanboy, like for most of like my life. And so I'd keep up with like what's Apple is releasing, whether it's like new phones or new software, new capabilities, and just like following through with that. I work like professionally as an iOS developer, but also there's this new capability. I feel like I've been preparing for this for the past few years by building apps as a side hobby as well. And knowing about like the problem that we actually have and like, yes, we can finally solve it. Because even before I learned to code, I used to have like a book where I'd put like various app ideas. And I'm like, I don't know how to build these app ideas, but like one day I might be able to. It felt good that like in that moment, there is a problem and I have all the skills I need to build it. So like, let's just go ahead and do it.
I love that it's like a culmination of like little experiences and passions that have enabled you to do what you've done here. And just want to point out, it's so funny how sometimes the passion projects are the ones that take off in the biggest way. So there's a unique selling proposition with Sweet Dreams here. You've positioned it around rest and calmer alerts, not just more data. So what problem did you set out to solve that other applications in the marketplace weren't really addressing?
Kind of plays into this concept of like an invisible app, an app where you don't need to open it or get notifications from it to kind of keep track of what's going on with it. So that's the idea, with like showing the reading on the lock screen with a graph and everything. So kind of all the data people would typically unlock their phone and open the app for, surface that on the lock screen instead. And that way they can be present in the moment without needing to disconnect to monitor this number that's like the most critical number in their lives. I wanted to call it Sweet Dreams because it's kind of like I love puns, and it's kind of a play on that with sweet being with diabetes, but also like to let people know that this is something that helps you like sleep easy and take care and rest well in your life. Like even in my like family's home when I lived with my parents and my brother's there, whenever his blood glucose would like start to go up and down, there's no way of really knowing unless a notification kicks in. So they had notifications set at like every level, and the house would look like we're in a like a secret military unit with like alarms going off everywhere. And that would happen like multiple times a day. Surely if we could have just glanced every few minutes and just have it there on your phone, we wouldn't need all these alarms. So the idea is like by giving people that confidence of knowing their sugar level, they won't need to constantly have alarms going off around them. So things like that. And that sort of then became the foundation for other features as well, where it's like, how can we make it that people are more, like kind of take care of people's well-being, whether it's the app's design or the name or theming or other functionality. Like we don't want it to feel like a clunky medical kind of solution, but sort of like a fun app that's like, hey, you know what? This is a bit playful. This is a bit enjoyable. Like, yeah, diabetes sucks, but apps in diabetes don't have to. It's not a fun experience to keep looking at that number like throughout your day. So how can we make it a little bit lighter and a bit more acceptable to do that?
Yeah, it's so funny. And I often draw on this example, but in contrast to like a social media application or a gaming application or something rooted in entertainment, the goal is not for the patient user, the type 1 diabetes user to not to live in this app. They should live in their life, right? And not live in like, oh, what's that number mean? Or what's happening there? It makes me think about the recent study that we did as a CGM UX study focused on type 1 diabetes patients. And it includes everything from adults to parent caregivers to teenagers. It captures a bit of the family aspect like you've worked on in Sweet Dreams. And I think of this diagram where we have collected information on the various tools that people use. And you're right. It looks like some type of operation sometimes in people's homes.
Yeah.
And one thing that jumped out to me is like even a baby monitor being placed into a child's room at a certain age. It's I already have this ailment, right? I already have this lifelong disease I need to monitor. Now my parents are putting a baby monitor in my room to make sure I'm safe, or other type of interruptions there. You know, to some, they might be like, oh, no big deal, like stay alive, right? But it's also quality of life that's important in there as well. So like the work you're doing is tremendously important because people have to cobble together many things to make sure that the one that they care for is safe. I think what people are seeking is calm, right? What do you think are the signals that tell you that your application is reducing the burden on patients?
So when we look at signals, it's sort of like how often are people opening our app? And it's like counter to, as you said, like social media entertainment. We don't want them to keep opening the app. And we've had issues because we kind of assumed in the past that if someone doesn't open the app for a week, we assume that they're inactive. So we kind of like suspend certain things for their account. And then people would tell us, hey, these things aren't working. And we realized, yeah, they just haven't opened the app for a week. They didn't need to. They were just monitoring it from the outside and through their notifications. And it's super interesting, like to see things like that. So I think that's like a big part of it. And also hearing from people that they're a bit comfortable reducing the alert thresholds, like when they start getting alerted, just because they know that like during this time of the day, they're monitoring it on their phone anyway. Their phone's on a nightstand or on their desk. And they're like, I don't need it to be blaring at me in the office all the time because I can see my reading. So things like that are like good signals for us. It's not opening the app as often, not needing as many notifications, that kind of stuff. I think, yeah, that's what we use.
I think that's the right way to look at it. It must be so satisfying to think you were addressing a problem and then have users come back and say like, no, like it's so good. I don't need to open your app all the time.
It's super interesting, honestly. And yeah, it's honestly so satisfying and means so much to us. Like, because I didn't expect this from the app. I thought it would be like something for my family to use and maybe like a couple other families if we're lucky. But now there's like a pretty large user base compared to at least what I'm used to in the past. And it's really like gratifying, like getting emails from people like almost daily where they like talk about the app and like the benefits that help them with. We're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep adding more features. Like we don't need to, but like, you know what? I'm just going to keep adding more features because this person loves the app, but wishes it had this one more thing. You know what? I'm just going to give it to them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so I noticed you leaned into iOS services here, like lock screen, widgets, live activities you mentioned earlier, dynamic island, Apple Watch, uh, and even like calendar and CarPlay visibility. Why are these surfaces so important?
I come from like a background of developing like specifically for iOS. And my wife comes from a background of like not developing at all, but like more in engineering. And she self-studied iOS development like with my support and stuff. And so now we're like two iOS engineers in the house. So our focus was iOS first. And initially it was just an app for iPhone, but people would ask for it on their other, like on their Apple Watch, on their MacBook, iPad, CarPlay. Like it started to kind of spread through all that. And Apple kind of like, credit to Apple, it's once you build like an iPhone app, it's not super hard to then kind of take that and put it in other places in the Apple ecosystem. So it was sort of like, yeah, why not? Let's enable that functionality. Because specifically for the watch, for example, at first it was just an iPhone app. And then we met a few people. We have like a Facebook group for Sweet Dreams, and we have like people coming in. And there was a guy called David, and we like became pretty good friends with him, got him like a gift at some point, and we're like always in touch. And he suggested the Apple Watch app, and he kept like pushing for it. Weirdly, I was a bit skeptical about it. I thought like the iPhone app should do the job. But after he like kept pushing, so I was like, okay, let's go ahead with it. And we did the Apple Watch app, and it became like maybe an even bigger selling point than the iPhone one.
Wow.
So it's interesting like that, like a lot of that came in conversation with other people. But things like CarPlay, for example, I was driving and I had my phone with Google Maps like docked up in the car, and I could see the reading in the dynamic island. And I was like, wow, if I was diabetic, like this is perfect. I can just drive and have the reading. And it got me thinking as well then about CarPlay, like if we can integrate that, like just bring it everywhere on Apple devices. And then the next step is to look how we can bring it to other devices like Android and Alexa and things like that. Hopefully I didn't trigger an Alexa in your room now.
No, you're good. You're good. Man, it just hit me when we were talking about driving. Imagine if for some reason you are a heavy commuter or you travel for work, and that includes a lot of road time, or the parent that is raising this young person that has type 1 diabetes, and they've reached that age where it's time to start letting them drive themselves to school. It's time to let them drive themselves to work and soccer practice and XYZ, knowing that they can see that they're in good shape on the way to go exercise or on the way to get to work or go meet up with their friends. That's got to be completely impactful.
It's not something that I really thought of. It was more when I saw it on Google Maps and also from people telling us. And it has been impactful, to be honest. We've had like people telling us that, oh, there's like heavy fines if you use your phone. Like there was people in Canada who told us like, oh, there's a huge fine if I use my phone in Canada while driving, but I need to because I want to know if I'm going to like, if there's any health issues that I need to take care of right now. And we started to do some things there in the car specifically where we added like glanceable emojis, and that came after like a user suggestion. Like we're not that smart. It was someone suggested it to us, where you can have an emoji that's like either green, yellow, or red alongside your reading. So if you're driving, you don't have to keep reading numbers. You can just kind of like peek with the corner of your eye and just see the color. And then we let people customize that so they can choose their green emoji, their yellow emoji, and the red one. And like a lot of people put hearts, like green hearts, yellow hearts, red hearts, and it was cute, you know. It's like these kind of things like make the experience a bit more playful, make it a bit more fun.
Yeah. And I mean, personal, like that,
exactly.
This means this means that. Yeah. My emoji in my notes, looks like a sticker book sometimes. So I think that would be one of the people for heavily using that. Do you notice any surprising behavior, any changes that occur when readings are ambiently visible versus like hidden, or like, you know, the user has to open the app?
It's not really super surprising, but it's kind of like it makes people more, like the two things I said earlier, makes people more present and it makes them have less notifications. And we saw that from like people's emails, but I also saw that whenever I visit my family and I would see them have the live activity on their phone on the lock screen. And I was like, that's cool. And I can see the impact like now versus a few years ago when I'd go visit and there's alarms everywhere and they're checking their phones all the time. And my brother has to check it before food, right after food, like for the next 2 hours, he's always checking his phone. Now he checks it for Instagram, but it's still on his phone. But it's sort of like having that number there and meant that they, like, yeah, people can be more present and they don't need to have alarms blaring all the time.
And being present is so important. I think that the thing that can exacerbate health conditions for us is when we are so worried about what could happen that would be negative. I think being cared for and caring for yourself is having the confidence to make what's going on in your life, make a sickness a priority, but not the priority.
You don't want it to like kind of consume your entire life. You want to be on top of it. You want to take care of your body, but you still want to live your life and take care of your well-being and your mental health as well.
Yeah. Wow. So what's interesting about your application, Sweet Dreams, is the positive feedback you received from notification style. How did you figure out the right way to speak to your users?
Yeah, it's kind of like a mixture of what I like saw would benefit my family and then also like user feedback. So things like slightly decreasing and things like that, that's stuff my family wanted. They wanted to just have that bit of extra awareness. Instead of like sugar decreasing, it's like it's slightly decreasing, it's not as bad as decreasing or significantly dropping or whatever it is. So that came through that. But then like other touches came from other people. Like, so people suggested to us, we initially used to say like, your blood sugar level is slightly decreasing. And they were like, you can just say glucose. And it even sounds nicer than like blood glucose, you know what I mean? Blood sugar level. And then these like little touches I think really add up, especially if you're seeing these alerts multiple times a day, like any small change like that, where it's like 1% happier or 1% less, brutal, just makes them feel better as well.
Yeah. Words have immense capabilities to influence emotion. I love the empathy. I love the empathy I'm seeing here. And I love that it's like rooted in like, first, what would work for my family? And then my wider, I guess we could say family as well, of users that use the application. How do we continue to listen to them and tweak things to improve the way we communicate? As we look at the study and the patients we talk to, there's like a sense of wanting like to be empowered and wanting to be informed. On the other end of it, there can be some anxiety inducing behavior in digital health applications and CGM applications specifically, as well as other ones. Like, where do you draw that line in driving motivating notifications versus like anxiety inducing notifications?
It's a hard one because it's like, sometimes you do need to kind of induce some anxiety to someone if it's like a really urgent situation. You want them to be aware of it. You don't want this to be like hey, you can kind of check this if you want to. It's like, this is urgent. You need to like pick up your phone right now. It's sort of like a balancing, like you're trying to balance this line that's really difficult to balance. Because on one hand, it's too many notifications and people start to develop this alert fatigue and they start to maybe even ignore some notifications. Like they might hear it and just like, whatever. And then on the other hand, it's like if you give too little notifications or very common notifications, people might like miss something that's super important. This is like something that we've been iterating on for like the past 2 years. So initially it was just the notification is there. And then we added in a feature where if you're on your phone, you can just hold on the notification and choose to snooze right from the lock screen. So again, kind of playing into this invisible app. You don't need to open the app to snooze your alerts. So you can just snooze it right there. I'm on my phone. You don't need to like scream at me 5 minutes later. Like I'm aware of what I'm doing. Like I'm on top of it. And that received like good like reception from users. And then we iterated on that where different alerts can have different sounds, and some alerts can break through like your phone's sleep mode or do not disturb. So people set that for like their urgent low numbers. And then we added the option like to have different alerts for when you're at work versus you're at home or versus when like your kid's at school. And you can change everything. You can change the threshold, the sound of the notification, whether it breaks through sleep mode or not, like kind of give them all that flexibility. So it's kind of like put it in their hands and give them that control where they can choose to balance it themselves. Like they have all the tools they need or most of the tools, they need to balance it themselves. And it's like up to them to choose what that balance looks like. And then it's just a matter of like educating users about these features, like best practices, things like that, use like smarter defaults. Yeah, so we kind of like chose to give the control to users in that sense and let them choose, and they at least have an option to choose their well-being and like trust themselves to make like the right call.
It's making me think of the experience map that we garnered from talking to users. And I just continue to think about teenagers. Like, you're a high school kid, you kind of just want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
You don't need something going crazy like when you're in the middle of a quiz, or, you know, in the middle of a conversation with friends, like, oh, hey, are you okay, man? Like, you know, I think maybe sometimes we don't give the youth credit for the amount of empathy that we are seeing in some of the younger generations. But still, in that setting, you don't want things blaring and going crazy. And then on the parent side or older sibling side, you know, you might be in a meeting and you want to be informed, but you get a obnoxious alert that is not right sized for the situation.
Yeah,
it causes a sense of panic unnecessarily. Like, these things, little by little, iteratively add up to stressors and can make things difficult. So it's interesting that you talk about the user taking the reins and deciding what's appropriate for them. Something just occurred to me, though. That customization is helpful. There's another line that probably needs to be drawn, and that's the line of, sure, you want to demote or configure this or soften this notification, but under no circumstance can we allow, you know, this level reading or this chain of events in your data to give you the space to ignore something serious. So what's that threshold look like? What's that like? Absolutely not. We want to give you control, but there's certain things that you cannot have control over.
That's something I would do if we were like the CGM's app itself. But with Sweet Dreams, the way it works is it's like a companion app. So if you use Dexcom, for example, Dexcom can mandate some alerts for you, and you can't turn them off. And if you try to turn them off, it like keeps annoying you until you turn it back on. For us, it's like we kind of treated that someone might have never downloaded Sweet Dreams in the first place, so they would have never had these alerts anyway. Our job then is to make sure people don't turn off alerts in Dexcom or Libre, like their main CGM one. So for like really important alerts, make sure you have them on. Like, we put a banner in our notifications page about that. Make sure you keep them on in your main app. Like, don't mess with that. Use ours as a companion for like the less urgent notifications, or maybe catch the urgent one a bit earlier than you would have with Dexcom, you know, something like that. I don't think it's even possible for them to fully get rid of alerts from their main app anyway. So our job is like, make sure you keep those on, but use us for like the less urgent ones, or even for the more urgent ones, use us, but use us alongside the other app as well. If we somehow mess up, if I make a mistake somewhere in the code or whatever happened, like, I don't want that responsibility. Like, use the main app as well. And that's always something we stress in the app.
Yeah. And it's redundancy. Any good system should have that to a certain degree without overloading the hardware or the user. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Now, you've explored family-friendly touches like quick messaging, family subscription models. What principles guide you when designing for caregivers without reducing the user's autonomy? And, you know, we've been talking about them quite frequently in this conversation, but especially for kids and teens, like, how do we balance that group care with autonomy for them?
Starting with like the quick message. So we have the option for people to like quickly send a ping or like an acknowledgement that they're monitoring things. And that started because of like, again, my family in our group chat, it would be like, we're sending updates about random things in life, pictures, whatever. And then it would be like hey, check, or like, he's called Muaz, check Muaz's trigger. And then like Muaz would answer, I'm fine, I'm at like school, this is blah, blah, blah. And it would sort of like be that happening like multiple times a day sometimes, but definitely multiple times a week. So that wasn't even one of the initial like thought processes for Sweet Dreams, but before we ever released it, we had that as one of our first features. And it just worked well for us that I was like, I don't want to clutter like our family group chat. I just want to be able to do that within a separate app. And then by doing that, it then opened up other avenues. So you know how I told you, like, if you get an alert, you can hold on it and snooze it from the lock screen, and that's like the invisible app. kind of mentality.
Yeah.
People can also set it up if they are using it within a family or caregiver setting, that they can also choose to ping directly from the notification. So
Wow.
if my brother's glucose level is dropping, I can ping him right from my notification or from my watch's notification. I don't have to open any app at all. And then he can acknowledge it back from the notification as well. So sort of like enabling that two-way communication with the invisible app mentality still ongoing. And we're actually working on a separate app as well, but to be released in the future, where it's like specifically focused on a caregiver setting. And with that, it's sort of reduce the autonomy given to the caregiver and let the parents fully control it. So parents can set things in the notification to say, glucose level is dropping, give them 3 whatever pieces of the specific food that we put in the lunchbox. It was actually started because one of we met someone on Sweet Dreams called Andreas, who reached out and he said his kid is going to school now and he's been using Sweet Dreams, and he's like, I think there's another problem to be solved here that does not fit within the capabilities of Sweet Dreams and will clutter the app for everyone else. And so we've been building it alongside him, and it's exciting. And yeah, we hope to release that in the next few months as well.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and request that we get a podcast episode when that
100%.
I want exclusive rights to talk about that.
You got
first.
it. I'll sign it right now. Yeah, you got it. It's also modeled over that where, within the diabetes space, to be honest, a lot of the apps we see that are not from the main companies tend to be free or open source. And there was sort of a bit of a weird feeling charging for this app in the first place, because it's you're kind of tackling a problem for the community. And it was should we even charge for this or should we not? And so we kind of took the approach where the app is free to download with some features, but then to unlock additional features, you pay a subscription and put it at a reasonable price. Keep the app sustainable. We have a server to run. We have costs to pay ourselves. But we said that it also makes sense then that one person paying makes sense. You shouldn't charge other people in the family. And in cases where it's multiple people in the family are diabetic, or multiple, someone wants to follow his friend who also paid for Sweet Dreams, we just figured yeah, that's enough. One person pay, everyone else can use it. No matter how many people want to follow you, 10 people, 20 people, you name it. As long as there's a subscription that's active, then I think that's fair to give to everyone else. Because my family, we wouldn't pay individually. We're 6 people. So it just makes sense, to focus on that as well.
Very not Netflix and streaming platform minded.
Start checking where people live and charging them extra.
Yeah, I had to throw that jab in into the conversation.
I respect it, man.
As a co-founder and developer, how do you balance speed and responsiveness to the community? You're getting Facebook group feedback, so on and so forth. You got to balance that with safety, quality assurance, and platform constraints. How do you approach that?
It's been honestly a fun part of our lives. Me and my wife, we, because we launched Sweet Dreams, I think it was 3 months after getting married. So it was sort of with us during this journey of our marriage. And it's yeah, it feels a big part of our life. And my wife tells me sometimes we're really grateful that we have this app that people use and that's keeping us busy. But nothing lasts forever. What would our lives look like without it? We'd have so much free time in our days now. It's kind of tricky to balance it where it's between development and answering customers, participating in Facebook groups and things like that, while we both have full-time jobs and living our own lives alongside it and stuff. I reduced my working days to 4 days a week just to have more time now to spend on this. My wife is the one who took most of the control of customer support and promoting the app and things like that, especially at the start. And now that she's starting to get more into the development of it as well, I'm also doing customer support. So we kind of split the work with customer support in half. And it's just part of our day-to-day life. We're sitting having dinner and we're discussing, someone suggested this feature today. What do you think? And it's a big part of our day-to-day. And we could be it would make more sense to do this way. And she's no, it makes more sense to do this way. And we're talking about it for 30 minutes. And then it's okay, we need to pause and do something else with our day. Let's go start cooking or something. So yeah, it's pretty hard to balance, but it's fun because it's with my wife and we live together. So it makes it easier to do so.
I love that. One marital piece of advice that I got was, remember that your relationship is bigger than the two of you. do you need a purpose together? So I just love that you guys have this purpose together, and that you're trying to balance also, like, okay, like let's maybe watch something or cook something.
Yeah. Let's put on Netflix before they raise their prices again. Let's finish the show.
Maybe they'll charge us because we're both sitting on the same couch. But like, I love that there's like that purpose and that passion, and it's so ingrained in your family and even your marriage. When you get like these list of ideas, or something is decided over a romantic dinner for two, what's your criteria for shipping or pausing, these features in the app?
One of the strengths of Sweet Dreams is that it's simple enough to use. We have people of all age groups, like whether children or grandparents using the app. And we want to make sure that like everyone knows how to use that. There's nothing, it's not too cluttered. It doesn't look too, walking in a hospital room and it's confusing with these big machines and all these buttons and all these numbers everywhere. So before adding any feature, it's like, does that fit in within everything else in Sweet Dreams? Will this clutter the app? Will this make like the other parts of the app harder to use? That's kind of like our main decider and driving force. And then we also base it on what people are asking us for and what we believe works well. We keep note of every feature request we get, and I get them, like since we split customer support, I have some and Salwa has some, and we start discussing like, what, I've been getting this a lot. And she's like, yeah, me too. And then it's like, okay, let's see if we can fit that into the app. So that's kind of what decides it. And I just remember though something about balancing time. It's the tricky part though about both of us like living together is like, let's say we're traveling. So like we're flying off and that's the whole day. It's like you're busy with packing and traveling and everything. And then people would have messaged us in the morning and they're waiting for a response by nighttime. We're too tired to answer tonight because we just had a long journey. And then it's just kind of things can stack up. So because our personal lives are intertwined as well, it just means that there's no one to know about it until we wake up, because we're both going to wake up at the same time. So yeah, that makes it a bit tricky.
But I hear you. That I can only imagine. Like when I travel, I'm not raring to open my laptop when I get to the hotel, and especially on vacation. For a work trip, my boss listens to this, so I'll say for a work trip, my laptop's always open and ready to go.
Of course. Yeah, 100%.
Here's a question kind of like off the cuff here. As a founder, as a co-founder, and something so ingrained in family, as you scale, would you consider leveraging AI for administrative support, not taking over, but aiding in streamlining product management?
We've used AI a lot, not for customer support, but for things like developing, like writing code. So even though we're both developers, AI has like grown tremendously, and it feels like a waste not to use it. So we use it like to assist us while we're coding and building certain features. For the app server, for example, like our experience is both with like the iPhone app itself, but we had to build out a server for the app. And that's not something we have much experience with. So AI was like great. And like, I literally tell my wife, I'm like, I'll build something and I'm like, would have taken me 10 times longer if AI didn't exist. Like, I'm really glad it does. So we already use AI for that. And I've started to use AI like to help with emails a little bit, in the sense that there's like common questions that we receive. So I have like templates for these common questions. And then my email app uses AI to tailor that like template back to the person's question. So in a sense, it's been like helpful there. But yeah, I'm always looking to see like where else we can utilize AI without like losing that personal touch with people. Because I think that's what made Sweet Dreams grow the way it is now, is like
absolutely
talk to people all the time. Like we put a button like to get in touch, and like almost every page in the app, like we have a button like get in touch. Any questions?
Wow.
You're stuck here. You don't know how to just get in touch. And that was like super helpful at the start, because it's like it meant more people talking to us, having that loyalty with them, building that friendship with people, and actually listening to them so we know what to fix in the future. To be honest though, like now it's sort of become that it means we get too many emails that we can't actually handle. Like I wish we can answer, like we do answer everyone, but I wish there was like, we have more time to like really put in even more thought in our answers and things like that. So AI would help. And I think AI can also help answer people's questions before they can like even get in touch with us, like surfacing questions that we think are relevant. So like, yeah, we're always exploring like what we can do with it, but 100% making sure that we're the ones talking to people. They're not talking to a machine thinking it's a human. Like that's
I love that. I love that. The AI is the assistant. It's not the point of contact.
Exactly. That's
Awesome.
a much better way of putting it. I didn't need to ramble for 2 minutes.
No, not rambling. It's good. It's good. So in our CGM UX study, there were some bottlenecks revealed, especially surrounding alert functionality, like reliability, context, sensory overload. We touched on that a little bit earlier. If you could change one first party behavior tomorrow to reduce burden, what would it be and why?
It would be to make it like possible for us to send like customized haptics. And I saw you talked about haptics in the study, but I think customizing like the vibrations and haptics on both iPhone and Apple Watch can help a lot. It's just one less thing for people to do, where it's like you don't need to hear a sound, you don't even need to see your phone. You can kind of know what the alert is just based on how your phone vibrates in your pocket. So I think that can help a lot. Like we've had people ask us for, I want my phone to vibrate for a few seconds if it's very low, or it's like, I don't want it to vibrate at all if it's, within a certain range. And we've been able to do that, but there's still like a lot of limitations around like vibrations with alerts. So I think if they open that up, that would be great.
In the same way we were talking about emojis or colors or making things more glanceable, if I don't even have to look because I know, a certain sequence of vibrations with a certain rhythm and spacing or intensity for any remote patient monitoring solution, that could be incredibly useful to be like, oh, the way that just vibrated, I'm in the middle of this conversation. My wife would probably appreciate this because I'm always looking down at my watch. She's like, are you busy? And I'm like, oh no, I got a notification.
Checking a notification. Yeah.
But like, say you're in a conversation in the office and you get a pattern of vibrations or a sequence that lets you know like, oh, I'm in a good place or I'm in a bad place. I think that's an excellent suggestion. So Apple, Android, if you're listening, we need your help.
Please.
Another area that's interesting in what we see in the data is people often find it challenging to receive timely alerts, like with watch first features or children without phones. Shout out to the parents that don't give their children phones too early, or when follow apps lack parity. Like what technical or policy changes could unlock the most value for patients in your opinion?
I think first party apps like Dexcom are probably limited by like regulations or something to be able to give the full experience for followers and for like the patient. And it's weird because you sometimes find features in the follow apps that's not in the patient's app and like vice versa. So I'm not too sure about that. I'm not too sure to speak into that, like in terms of what regulations are preventing that from doing that, if that's even the case. From our side though, it's always been give the same experience for everyone. Like any feature we add, we're not like restricted in that sense. So I think with the watch one, like you struck an important point there, because a lot of people don't want to give their kids a smartphone, but they're fine with a watch if that's going to connect to their CGM. And we've had that from people a lot. And Dexcom, I think, is the only one at the moment who does allow that, where like a watch can connect to your Dexcom sensor and get data through that. The issue though is that it doesn't upload it to followers unless you're on Wi-Fi. So if you have even if you have cellular data on your watch, it's not going to upload it to a follower. It's one of those things which don't make sense. It might be a regulation, it might be like an oversight, but it feels like it's intentionally blocked out. So things like that, like enabling that, like I feel like they have the ability to do it, but they're not. Same with Libre. They can connect to the sensor and pull that data and transmit it over cellular data, but they're not. For I guess for regulation reasons, again, they lock these sensors that makes it super hard for us to get that data at all. So we can't do something where it's like the watch connects to the CGM, but like I'd love to do that. But in general, I think anyway, opening up this data to developers would be really beneficial. I guess there's like a lot of regulatory work there, but right now it's sort of like you have to rely on like loopholes and things to get that data, and it makes it harder for us. Like I put in a lot of work all the time just to keep up with their updates, to make sure like Libre's app gets an update and all of a sudden Sweet Dream stops working and it's at 3 a.m. I'm asleep and my phone starts vibrating because the app is down. So things like that, where it's like opening up that data to developers. Like if you're not gonna, improve your app and, and fill these gaps, and you can't fill all the gaps in one app, then I think it's important to open it up to developers.
So some users compare Sweet Dreams to Sugarmate, Gluru, lock screen graphs, deltas, and nightstand style displays. Where do you intentionally differentiate? And where do you think the convergence of benefits actually helps the community?
I think SugarMate was like one of the first third-party diabetes apps. Like shout out to them. They're like the OGs in this, I think. I think with diabetes, it's like impossible for one app to cover everything. And that's why even like for us, like within Sweet Dreams, we're working on a second app because even these two experiences cannot be covered in one app. So I think I really like that there's more apps and that they focus on like a variety of different things. So whether SugarMate, I think it's good for like keeping track of like history and stats. And then I think with Gluro, it's about like, they have like features to do with insulin and things like that we don't have. So, and I know a lot of people who use like multiple apps side by side. They tell us they use it, or they send us a screenshot and you can see all the different apps there on their phone. I think for Sweet Dreams, our focus was initially at least make it as easy as possible to see that number, whether it's on your phone, your watch, your lock screen, your car. So that's sort of like where we intentionally were different from the other apps. And then I think going forward, it's sort of like the app is one of the most fun ones to use from all the other like diabetes apps. Like make it really approachable, simple to use, fun to use, that kind of stuff. Like that's been our focus. But I think the diabetes like developers community should work together, and it's good to talk to each other. I've like spoken to multiple like developers who build diabetes apps, including like there's one called GlueSight, which is also for like historical data and stats. And its developer reached out to me because there was an issue with Sweet Dreams, and he helped me fix it. And then I helped him test it after he was building it. And it was really great that he did that. And yeah, we're friends. We text like at least once a week about various things for like the past year or two. So it's like I've met people through that. And with Sweet Dreams, like I've shared like tutorials on how to get that data from Dexcom and Libre to help other developers with it. And I've been in touch with them and promoted their app on our Facebook group as well. So I think it's because of like people in the space kind of understand that it's not like a dirty competition between different apps. It's sort of like we're here to help each other and promote each other and grow together. There's so many opportunities and so many like problems to solve. No app is going to do it all. So let's work together and let's make it more fun and a pleasant experience for everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like this community that you're developing within understands that it's about the patient. It's about real life situations. So it's not about like outranking you or anything like that. The best thing that can take place from this technology is just improve quality of life for diabetic patients and their family.
We understand the importance of that. I understand that your app does things that my app doesn't do. So I'll tell people about your app. If someone asks me about something at Sweet Dreams, hey, does it do that? I'm like, not yet, but if you check out this app, it does. And that's fine because it's like our goal is to help these patients and there's room for everyone, to be honest. So
yeah, we've covered that in previous episodes where it's like making your digital health solution available to other solutions is completely important. And in this particular case, we're talking maybe in a bit of a contained fashion because we're talking about diabetes specifically, but we've talked about, tracking pain and integrating that with post-surgical wound detection, AI software. Like I get excited for the future because I do think that apps will be more like yours and become quite invisible, but they also will be collaborative and give us like a holistic reading of our healing process or our preventative care process as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I do think that's where it's going. And I think with things like Apple Health and Google Health or Google Fit, like things like that become more useful. And with Sweet Dreams, like we write to Apple Health, we read from Apple Health, and I know other apps do the same. So it's sort of like, let's give the patient like access to all their data and with whichever app they're using, and then any app can pull that data back. And again, it's like, it's honestly such a nice community, whether it's like the developers, the patients, the parents. I think it's one of the nicest communities I've like seen online, and online communities don't tend to be that nice. So
yeah, I was just like thinking about how you're saying people are being nice online.
It's kind of strange, right?
That's unique. So people are debating whether to go with subscription models or one-time fees, and they're asking for better support across watches and Android devices. We're just kind of talking about the future a bit here. What do you think of like forward-looking sustainability, platform choices, and the features you'll focus on in the next year?
I'm subscribed to a lot of apps. My older brother hates that. He's super anti-subscriptions. But I get it. I'm like, with a subscription, you kind of contribute to maintaining that app's like longevity. It's sort of like if you charge for an app one time as like a lifetime purchase, you're kind of paying for what you have now. But with a subscription, I feel it kind of gives the customer actually more control, because then they can choose, like, do I want to pay for this app this month? When it hasn't been updated in 3-4 months, I don't want to pay for it anymore. I think it gives them more control than if we were to charge them upfront like a lifetime price for the next, like, to cover them for the next few years. I think so. Yeah, subscriptions just kind of keep developers motivated, and it gives the control to customers. It's like a win-win situation. So then the app gets better. And I think as well, for apps like Sweet Dreams, I don't think we can even do lifetime. Like, we've thought about offering that, but the problem is the way we get the data from like Dexcom and Libre, it's like through some loopholes and things like that. And one day it can shut off. So it just doesn't feel right to then like charge people a lifetime fee. And then like a few months later, this goes offline and they've paid expecting like many years of usage. So like max we do is like a 1-year subscription, which then at least we can refund you like the remaining few months, or if you pay monthly, it stops working, that's fine. Or people switch as well. Like if someone's subscribed to before, like we didn't used to have Libre in the past. So if someone was using Dexcom and then switched to Libre, they couldn't use Sweet Dreams anymore. But if they paid lifetime, it's like they might have expected to be able to use it with other CGMs. So I think it just like kind of gives us that breathing space and gives customers the choice to then be like, I don't want to pay for this anymore, or I can't use this anymore. Good thing I didn't pay for like 5 years of it, you know what I mean? And looking ahead, like for the next year, there's a lot there, to be honest. It's super exciting. It's where we've got like features for viewing more about like your historical data. So kind of more like stats driven approach as well for like reviewing like the past week, the past month. We're trying to approach it in like a bit of a unique way where it's like the desired is the focus again. And we got things like about following multiple people, because it's not something we support, but a lot of people ask for it. Like if a parent has 2 children with diabetes, you want to follow them both within Sweet Dreams. So we've got stuff there, and that's hopefully just like the next few months, and then like the start of 2026 will be even better. So it's super fun to work on this, and it's honestly super fun, and it feels good to surprise people with an update like once a month or once every 2 months, and just seeing the joy they have. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I'm people. When I get an app update, I'm just
it's like, awesome, right? Like, yeah, really it's just great. Yeah.
And I like kind of showing off when people are like, hey, what's going on in your phone? Like, oh, you didn't know that the app updated? Oh, let me show you how
that. You didn't know?
You're not up on things? Oh, okay. That's weird. So if you were designing the perfect alert profile system, think sleep, meetings, workouts, how do you see haptics, escalation, snooze modes, recurrence, and follow app parity working when everything is done just right?
I think if it's like done perfectly, if it's like perfectly, and it's like, what the person ate, how much insulin's in their body, you know everything. You can predict that kind of stuff. You can predict that they're going to experience a drop in their sleep. And then instead of waking them up at night, you let them know before they sleep that either they need, if you just have this before you sleep, it's going to be better. Or even if they have to wake up at some point in the night, let them know that like kind of like FYI, like your sugar's going to drop at like 3 a.m. and you're going to need to wake up. So just like be aware of that. And then in terms of like haptics and repeatability and stuff, I think notifications should kind of get more annoying as you ignore them for the urgent stuff. And then for the less urgent stuff, it should sort of like start silently. Say I'm diabetic and my blood glucose starting to go up. Maybe it's not super urgent. Maybe I can just see it light up on my phone without any vibrations, without any sound. And I can just acknowledge that. And then the app is like, okay, cool. Like I don't need to pester him anymore. In an ideal world, patients wouldn't need to set any of this up. It would just be intelligent enough to work. I'm not taking that risk in Sweet Dreams. People can choose how to do that. They can choose how often the alerts will repeat and things like that. And I think it's like scary for developers or like for teams to build that, and that this could be used by like thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and everyone's like life is different. So even with like predicted alerts, it's everyone's body is different. Everyone's body responds to insulin and glucose differently. I think though with AI in the future, and that's something like my older brother is interested in. He's like super into AI. So he's like, he wants to build like a profile of like based on your past like year or two of blood glucose, insulin changes, all that kind of stuff. Can you then predict accurately what's going to happen for the next few hours? And I think you can. I think like the tech is now here. So that would be like the perfect system, like intelligent enough to maybe not even have to interrupt you at all, but like know that this is the right time to like get your attention, to just let you know, hey, you're going to need to do this in a couple of hours. And then you don't need to pester me in 2 hours because it's like, now is the time to do it. So if I know, hey, you know what, this is going to happen in 2 hours, that's great. So I think there's a lot of room there, a lot of room for like more intelligent alerts.
Yeah, I think one word that jumped out in our studies was this notion of empowerment. You know, at the base level, it's reliable and accurate. Then the next level, it's customizable. Then the next level, it's like, oh, there's a little bit of intelligence there. And then the peak level is like empowerment to go and do what I need to do. And a lot of what you said resonated with me, but from the top of the call, and it's not like we have a shortage of things to agree on, but the top of the call, when you talked about being invisible, it made me think of the way we've kind of summarized things. Like the next leap forward in CGMs is not rooted in the sensor, but in the silence.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah.
Hey, shout out to the team for penning that. That's strong language. But yeah, it's the absence of interruption and the focusing on laughing with a family member or grabbing a meal together and not being profoundly worried about what's going to happen next. Again, circling back to something that struck me during the conversation, if I had a child that was learning to drive and was maybe struggling with blood sugar level and after school activities and XYZ, being notified of what's going on with them and them being notified while they're doing other activities without totally distracting them from living is profoundly important. So orchestrating all of these ways that devices interrupt us is very important. But most importantly, we'd love for them to not interrupt us, or like you said, make the app invisible.
You've put it really well, to be honest. And I think, yeah, things like having different like notification profiles, it's something that not many apps are doing. Look, I don't want to make it sound like it's a plug for Sweden by saying this part as well, but it's sort of like, yeah, something people asked us to do and we did it, where it's, so if you're at work or if you're asleep, if you're having dinner, you can have different profiles. I think that's super important. Just again, like, yeah, to have like silence. I mean, yeah, you guys put it perfectly, man. Like silence is almost as important as the alerts.
Yeah. Well, Marwan, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm out of questions. So I'll stop here. I want to thank you for joining us on the Radian Podcast and sharing your story and the work you've been doing. We're going to continue to follow you and stay in touch. There will be more segments of our study released in the coming weeks and months. So I will annoy you on LinkedIn and send them to you. And yeah,
thanks. Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, like it's a good opportunity to talk about Swedish dreams, talk with people who've like studied this, get the word out there. And yeah, and I've read the study or like parts of the study so far that have been out. It's great. Like, and I would encourage anyone watching to read it. There's like so many like golden gems in there. I think people really benefit from it. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Radian Podcast. If you found this episode insightful, we'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube and follow us on LinkedIn or X for more updates and insights.